Centennial Podcast is on summer hiatus. I offer you a new podcast, ORSI Reports, a podcast on research, scholarship, and innovation in the Nazareth community. These brief reports will share stories of the research and community engagement of faculty, staff, and students. Today, we're going to speak with Laura Polshak from Occupational Therapy and her work with Orion, the service dog.
How did this project gain your interest?
Okay, well, this topic and working with Orion on campus actually stemmed from my interest in what's going on with students and mental health and student stress. And one of my earlier student research projects was actually about occupational therapy student stress. And we found that indeed students are very anxious, nervous about grades, and that's the major stressor for the students. And I was wondering what's available, what is out there that we can do to help these students. One of the things that I've been interested in since I began occupational therapy, my original master's degree thesis was on animal assisted therapy with children and adolescents. I've always had that interest there, very impressed at the effect that animals can have on people, especially around stress and anxiety. And so I thought about what can we do on campus. And I know that our campus has not had a lot of animals before, that people have been a little bit hesitant about incorporating them. And so I wanted to find something that would be structured and trustworthy as far as initiating the process of bringing animals to campus. And I thought of Guiding Eyes for the Blind because the dogs are specifically bred, raised, and trained to interact and work with humans. And not only that, but it's also doing something good for the outside community, bringing up a Guiding Eyes puppy. So I put in a proposal to the administration about becoming a puppy raiser and bringing the dog with me to campus, and how students could participate in research and the studies out there on stress in college students and the effects that animals can have. The administration said, yes, go for it. And so I went through the process of becoming a puppy raiser through Guiding Eyes for the Blind. It's a 6-hour training course, then a home visit, then a puppy sit. There's a whole process that you go through. It's really interesting. And then I was paired with Orion at just 6 weeks old because of the pandemic. So that is how it all got started. And actually Guiding Eyes was wonderful because they wanted to make sure that we were ready to roll. This was April 15th. That she came home to us. Guiding Eyes wanted to help me make sure she was ready to be on campus at the end of August. So they thought that timing would be just right. And it worked out really well. So that's how it got started.
The use of animals and humans working together as part of the OT experience. Was that something you studied a great deal when you were working on your degrees, or is it just something that you noticed in the field?
Do you mean how did I first get interested?
Right, exactly. So in terms of animal, humans, and you mentioned master's thesis and
right. That's a wonderful question. I don't remember what prompted it exactly, to be honest with you, but I know that I was interested even back then. I did not grow up with dogs. Not until we didn't have a dog until I was in high school. I really don't know where I initially became interested in it. Isn't that funny? I can't remember. But I do know that once I was in the field, I was able to use dogs. One of my dogs was trained as a therapy dog. And when I worked at Mary Carriol Children's Center, I brought him there and he participated. A different dog who I still have now, when I worked at Hillhaven Nursing and Rehabilitation, I would bring him. And what I really liked about bringing a dog to a setting for the day I liked being able to only incorporate the animal where it really fits in and where it's appropriate. It's not a match for every person in every situation. So I like the environment that it helps create. It creates a warm, welcoming environment, at least for people who like animals, and can be a reward for a child or something meaningful for an adult to, and I can't tell you how many of the people who were working on their rehabilitation who have been through a trauma like a stroke or an amputation would come down to therapy and say, getting to see the dog is one of the main reasons I want to come to therapy. And just waiting for their turn and being able to interact a little bit with the dog alone was very therapeutic for people. And then very occasionally we would incorporate, there was another dog that was there too, but we would incorporate them into therapy, maybe throwing a ball or working on standing by putting the dog on a table for somebody who needed a distraction. I even at one point created a vest that had fasteners all over it that people could work on, that the dog would wear. And so seeing what an impact that had on children and adults made me want to integrate it more as much as possible. I also think there's something very powerful about an animal just being in the milieu, more so than I wouldn't want to be a therapist who is, I am an animal assisted OT. I think that like any other modality that you might use in therapy, whether it's certain paraffin bath to loosen joints, or certain games that you might use with children. I think it's like any other treatment modality, that there's times when it really fits in well and is appropriate, and times that just it's not necessarily needed. But you also, when I just talk about the environment that a dog creates in the clinic, that people felt happy to come down, and or in an office at Mary Carriola and children walk by and see the dog, or the same thing on campus. Students would walk by, students after a hard exam would say, this is just what I needed. Or very frequently seeing students on campus, just having some students responded in the survey that just seeing her on campus made them happy. It didn't even have to be an interaction.
Tell us a little bit about the Orion study. You've had a whole year of the intervention.
Right. So the research project involving Orion was with first year students, and it was with 4 of my graduate students worked on this with me. And what we wanted to do was give students a chance for some one-on-one interaction with Orion, and then to take a look at the effects that potentially or their interpretations of how that may have had an effect on their experience entering school. Again, it's not a cause and effect, of course, kind of a situation. It's just looking at the student's report of their experience. But what we did was we created an orientation session. So first we put out a request for first year students who are interested in participating with us. And then we looked to see who we could schedule in an orientation session. And then I needed to be able to be in my office to work with the students to pass off Orion for their visits. So we had to work out a schedule where students would take Orion for 30 minutes a week for 4 weeks. And we had 2 sessions of that, one in September and one in October. And the students who we couldn't fit into the schedule ended up being our control group. So there were 14 students who participated in the project, 7 in September, 7 in October. And first what they did was they came to an orientation session run by myself and one of the graduate students, where they learned all about Guiding Eyes for the Blind, what Orion was doing there. And they had a chance to interact with Orion and practice walking with her, and learned about all the different pieces involved with taking care of her and what they could do with her. Basically, they could take her out on campus for a walk, or there was a graduate assistant office that was pretty empty. So if it was rainy or ugly out, they could go in there with her and play with some toys, work on some of her skills with her. And then the students had their sessions. And what was really amazing with 14 students, there were 14 students, and they each had 4 sessions. So 28, 56, right? Yeah, that's 56 sessions. The students made it to 55 of the 56 sessions, which I think for first year students, that's pretty impressive. Yes, so it was clearly really motivating for them. And they took her out on campus, and it was a learning experience for all of us because she wasn't entirely predictable all the time. And so I might do it a little bit differently now, but overall, she was a little bit of a challenge, but overall it worked out well. And the students on their last day filled out a survey for us. And first questions were, what did you like about the project? What would you change about the project? Do you feel like having this experience helped your adjustment to college in any way at all? And then on a new page, we had a list of all of the areas that we thought might be beneficial to them in interacting with Orion based on the literature. So we didn't want to give them ideas as to what the benefits were at first. So that's why it was on a new page and they couldn't go back. But some of the areas that the literature suggested might be helpful for students in interacting with an animal or a dog usually, were easing homesickness, decreasing stress, feeling affinity for the campus, et cetera, et cetera. And so we had, I think, 10 areas. And what was so interesting is that we asked them on a Likert scale how important each of those areas was to them, extremely important to not at all important on a 5-point scale. And 93% of them said that stress relief was extremely important. The other 7% said very important. And the second most important thing to them, which was really surprising and impressive, was that that this project was geared towards helping somebody who's blind. And I really love that because it just shows it's sort of that community giving back, helping others that I think Nazareth is trying to instill in our students, and why some students choose Nazareth. And so I was really impressed with that. The third most important one, I believe, was a chance to focus on something other than academics. There was a lot of comments about having something to look forward to. A couple of people mentioned the fact that there's not a lot to do, not a lot to look forward to with COVID. And I think that knowing that they had something and some form of interaction was definitely beneficial for students. So we're still waiting on the results for GPAs and retention rates, but it will be interesting to see what we find there with the students who did participate and the students who didn't.
That's great. So recently had some news about Orion. Do you want to share that with the campus?
Well, it's good and bad news, right? So, so as I mentioned, Orion's a little feisty and a little stubborn at times. And she basically in December this month, it was early December, dragged me over to a pond, threw herself in, went swimming and managed to get herself a 30-year infection. And I think it's because of the swimming. I think it's because the illicit swimming in a pond, she ended up getting a 30-year infection. And what I was told by Guiding Eyes is that basically she has to be dismissed from the program because chronic ear infections don't stop. They tend to recur. And so she will not qualify as a Guiding Eyes dog. And she also won't qualify for the other programs that they have. So they also have a new program they're starting where they place released dogs with children who are blind, just to start getting them into the habit of working with a dog that is the same type of dog that they might have as a guide dog in the future. There are other programs that Guiding Eyes dogs can do, such as other types of service, but because of the chronic ear infections, which they think will continue, she doesn't qualify for any of those. So that's the bad news. But the good news about that is that they offered for me to keep her. It didn't take the family long to make that decision. Everybody was enthusiastic about that. And I proposed to Nazareth that she stay on, keep coming to the campus with me and work on training as a therapy dog, which is also something the research students can participate in, and so can students on campus. this proposal was approved and she's going to keep coming to campus, but now she's our NAS dog. It's too bad that she's not going to go on and help somebody who's blind, but she's going to go on and help a lot of people. And some of the ideas behind that would be perhaps participating occasionally in on-campus clinics, perhaps participating in the reading program that comes to campus, interacting with students just as meet and greets, which is something that I know students are very, very interested in. She's also participated in a couple of ACS classes, which has been a really positive experience. So some first year and new student experiences would be a great place for her. So the other positive about it is that Orion loves coming to campus, loves being the center of attention, and loves students coming up and wanting to interact with her. So it's a win-win, I think, for everybody.
Orion remaining on campus is a win-win for everyone, as is the research agenda of Dr. Polshuk and many of the other scholars at Nazareth, who blend their research, their teaching, and their community engagement. ORSI Presents looks forward to sharing more such stories in its own podcast, coming soon. Our thanks to Laura Polshuk for speaking with us, to the Free Music Archive for sharing Simon Mathewson and Metra's Tyrannus, and our thanks to you, the listener. We look forward to sharing more stories with you.